All right, for more on this, we're now being joined by Dovza Kim from Washington, D.C. He's a former Undersecretary of Defense in George W. Bush administration and currently Senior Advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Mr. Zakim, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
Right, sir. Now to begin with, we're seeing that Mark Rutte has raised alarm. He is saying that many European nations do need to increase their defense spending. We know that Trump's stance on this is very clear as well. He has said that the United States will pull out of the NATO alliance. Do you think this is a way of Mark Rutte to urge the NATO bloc to prepare for a Trump administration?
Well, it might be, but the truth of the matter is Rutte is just right. In his speech, he pointed out that the Russian buildup, military buildup and industrial military buildup goes well beyond whatever it needs for Ukraine, even if it fights Ukraine somewhat longer. This is a long-term challenge. And by the way, 23 out of the NATO members have reached 2% or are reaching 2%. That leaves a whole bunch of others that aren't even there, as you've already mentioned, for example, Italy, Spain. Then there's the problem that small countries are terrified of what Putin might do. And the smaller countries are spending money. Lithuania, for example, is already spending 3.5% of its gross domestic product on defense and wants to go up to 5%. Now, gross domestic product simply per person means that they are spending more relative to their small population than Germany is relative to its large population. So it's not just Mr. Trump's threats or implications that are getting NATO to wake up. NATO is waking up because Rutte says, rightly, Putin wants to swallow up Ukraine and he's not going to stop there. After all said and done, Russia already is inside Romania, inside Moldova with Transnistria. It's inside Georgia with North Ossetia and Abkhazia. So this is not something that just started this year or last year. This has been going on since Russia first invaded Georgia in 2008 and then seized Crimea in 2014. NATO is waking up, and it's the 11th hour.
Right, and it's great that you mentioned Georgia because we know that the events that are happening politically, and not just in Georgia, but a lot of other several European countries, they're moving away from EU and probably towards Putin-leaning governments, probably. Then how do you see this pan out with Rutte warning?
Well, in the first place, we know that Russia interferes in elections. Look how the Romanian Supreme Court just invalidated the election that took a minor candidate and put him in the lead, a guy who's pro-Putin. So, you know, we're talking about influence and all kinds of gray kind of actions, as they're called, that are seeking to undermine the West. And I would point out to you that as early as the beginning of the Cold War, George Kennan, the great American diplomat, wrote back to the United States government that what Stalin was trying to do was to divide Americans against each other. And quite frankly, what Russia's trying to do today is to do the same thing, not just vis-a-vis the United States, but throughout NATO. There is no question in my mind that Putin, as Rutte says, is not going to stop at Ukraine. There is Moldova, that's probably next, and after that, a NATO country. So either the West wakes up, if it's Trump that's getting them to wake up, or Rutte that's getting them to wake up, or Lithuania that's getting them to wake up. The West has to wake up because, quite frankly, as much as they might spend on defense now, if they go to war, it'll cost them a lot more.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Of course, how it pans out, we'll have to see. But thank you so much for joining us, Zakim, and giving your perspective.
Thank you for having me.